Here's a question that the citizen science community has faced for years and that feels more urgent than ever right now. If you collect the data, run the project, engage the community, and document the change, does anyone who has the power to act on it actually believe you? This is Prove It, the third episode in this podcast series. These conversations were recorded at a policy event held in Brussels on 4th of June. It was the final event in the ECS project series and brought together policymakers, researchers, and citizen science practitioners from across Europe. An episode about legitimacy, evidence, and what it actually takes for citizen science to be taken seriously by the institutions that matter. I'm Aishwarya. Let's get into it. I want to start this episode with something that reframes the whole question.
So how can we drive social change in research without citizen participation? I don't think we can. I think we often forget that the things we're researching and the things we want to change, everyday people, are the ultimate experts in it.
That's Carolina Duran, who coordinates the ECS project at EXA. And what she's describing isn't just a philosophical position, it's a methodological one. The people most affected by a problem carry knowledge about that problem that no researcher, however credentialed, can fully replicate. But knowing that is one thing. Getting institutions like funders, policymakers, publishers, ethics boards to act on it is a whole other thing. At the Brussels policy event, Amalia, a policy officer at the European Commission, offered the clearest definition of what citizen science actually is that I've heard across any of these conversations.
I would say that citizen science is the possibility for all people in general to participate in knowledge production, right? And this means, for example, collecting data, gathering observations, and also co-shaping research questions.
Co-shaping the research questions means not just filling in the data gaps that researchers have already defined, but being part of deciding what gets asked in the first place. That's a significant shift, and from the Commission's perspective, the stakes are clear.
Citizen science is a very important and valuable practice because it contributes to opening science, right? And also it contributes to building trust in science.
The phrase trust in science lands differently in 2026 than it might have a decade ago. We are living through a period where the relationship between institutions and the public, between expertise and everyday life, is under enormous strain. And into that gap, citizen science is making a very specific argument that science done with people, rather than on them, builds something that traditional research struggles to produce on its own.
The benefits of citizen science is it brings citizens closer to science and it brings science closer to citizens.
Gefyen is the technical coordinator of the Impetus project, a European citizen science accelerator that ran alongside the ECS project and has now concluded its work. But she also pushed back on the framing that tends to surround these conversations.
You often have this image in society of these scientists who are somewhere over there doing their thing. They are researching things that you never heard of, that you don't even understand what the question is, let alone what the research is about or what it even means. Citizen science makes science that people care about.
One of the things I've noticed across every conversation in this podcast series is that citizen science practitioners are very good at telling individual stories. But the question institutions ask is different. They want aggregate evidence. They want scale. They want data they can put in a report. And that evidence is now arriving.
Citizens really participate in each and every phase of the research process. And this can mean, for example, co-shaping the research questions with the research teams, or even thinking together about the methodologies, or, interpreting findings, or even contributing when it comes to disseminating research outcomes.
At the Brussels event, Antonella Pisani, impact lead at the Impetus project and researcher at T6 Ecosystems, described what that evidence base now looks like in practice.
And now we have the data. We have data about the impacts of 129 projects. So we can say, what are the changes they made? what's the social impact, the economic impact, the political impact, the environmental impact. And I think being able to gather this information, to monitor the change, the transformation this group of people made is really important in order to valorize citizen science and show that citizen science can really make a difference in different fields.
But here's where it gets interesting, because Gefion, who has been inside this evidence-building process, isn't entirely comfortable with the frame around it.
I don't like the question. I'm going to change it. Mainstream sounds wrong.
She was responding to a question about mainstreaming citizen science, and her discomfort is worth sitting with, because there's a version of legitimacy that costs something, where citizen science becomes respectable only by becoming more like traditional research, adopting its language, its standards, its hierarchies, and there's a version that holds its ground.
Many projects, in my view, the best projects, start with citizens wanting something, wanting to know something, wanting to address something, wanting to understand something in their local environment, for example. And then they go out, they find a researcher, and they make a project. Those are the ones I love the most because they are really closest to the community.
The best projects start with citizens, not with researchers who go looking for a community to validate their existing question.
One of the worst practices I see is researchers designing their own project, figuring out what they are interested in, and then trying to find the right community to engage with to answer that question, which is the wrong way round. You need to really engage the community in developing the question in the first place so that you can address a question that is relevant for the community, and then they will engage a lot more, and because it's much more relevant to them.
And Carolina went even further with a story about one of her academic heroes that is the best single argument for citizen science.
And one of my academic heroes, she studies wasps, and she recently just told me a story on how by interacting with local communities in the places where she was studying wasps, she found so much more information about the particular species of wasp than she had by just doing the research herself. So these communities who do not necessarily give high importance to these wasps or actively care about them, just by being in the environment where they exist, have already so much knowledge. We get knowledge that we wouldn't get otherwise.
We get knowledge that we wouldn't get otherwise. That's the case in one sentence. Not a values argument, not an inclusion argument, but again, a methodological one. The data is better when more people are part of producing it. The barriers to citizen science being taken seriously aren't only external, like out there in a skeptical public or in a funding body that doesn't understand the methodology. Sometimes they live inside the institutions that are supposed to champion it.
From personal experience, I experienced a lot of barriers in getting involved from, when I was in academia, from where the funding is coming from the leadership of the organization I was doing my research. It doesn't seem to be a valued use of time for researchers to be including citizens or having a participatory methodology as part of their research, because all we care about is data and high impact publications.
High impact publications, that's the currency of academic careers. In participatory research, the kind that takes time, that builds relationships, that moves at the speed of community trust rather than grant cycles, it doesn't always fit neatly into that economy.
It allows for a different approach and different perspectives to be brought in to make sure that the research that is being done aligns with the needs of the people that need it. It's easy to say that researchers and scientists know best, but nobody is an expert at everything, even if you've got a PhD or if you've done certain sciences for X number of years.
Nobody's an expert at everything, not even the researcher with the most credentials. And at the commission level, something is shifting, not just in rhetoric, but in structure.
Also, the Commission, we have now this very interesting structural policy to foster trust in science through citizen participation, engagement, and science communication. And this is where citizen science can really play a key role.
A structural policy, not a project, not a pilot, a policy. That's a different level of institutional commitment. Proof, legitimacy, data quality, validation frameworks, these are all means to an end. And the end, when you strip it back, is change. real change in the lives of real people.
I think citizen science can make research more equitable by being open and transparent. When you have to include people to be part of your research, you have to be open, you have to be transparent.
When we implement citizen science projects with communities, we tend to implement these projects with communities affected, right, by the topics, the questions that we want to investigate, right? So why is it important? Because in this way, we can make sure that the research questions are aligned with the concrete needs of the citizens. And then at the same time, we can also make sure that the answers that we deliver are impactful and are actionable, right?
Impactful and actionable. That's what proof is for. Not to satisfy a reviewer, not to secure the next grant, to make something change for someone who needed it to change.
Also, what's the point of creating knowledge if we're not going to share it? Who is meant to benefit from the knowledge research creates, if not everyone?
The honest answer to this episode's title question, prove it. Can citizen science be taken seriously by the people who need to take it seriously? Is increasingly, yes. The data exists. The policy frameworks are being built. The Commission is paying attention. But Geffian's discomfort with the word mainstream, it stays with me because the version of citizen science that gets taken seriously by institutions is not automatically the version that stays closest to the communities it was built to serve. That tension doesn't resolve. It's managed. Conversation by conversation, project by project, question by question.
Citizen science makes science that people care about. It educates people about what science is and how science works, how scientists see the world, and it also helps scientists see how citizens see the world.
That exchange goes both ways, and it always has. Thank you for listening to this episode of the ECS Projects podcast series. This episode wouldn't have been possible without Chris Stiles, Communications Officer for the Impetus Project, and videographer Brody Lee for collecting the interviews. I'll see you in the next one.